For years, she walked every morning. Every evening, an alien mother, carrying her young kit to school across harsh terrain, unnoticed by the galaxy around her. Then he saw her, a human truck driver. Ordinary by all accounts, recognized the struggle, the dedication, and the silent suffering. One small act of attention became the spark that changed both their lives. This is not a story about grand heroics. It is a story about how human empathy, awareness, and simple acts of kindness can reshape destinies even in worlds where hardship is taken for granted. When the galaxy expects indifference, humans prove that compassion is the true power. If you enjoy HFY sci-fi stories, heartwarming alien-human interactions, and moments where humanity defies expectations, subscribe to the channel and stay with us. Your support helps bring more unforgettable stories to life. She lived where the town slowly faded into empty land. Old warehouses stood broken, weeds grew through cracks in the road, and very few people ever came there by choice. This was where the alien mother had made her home. It was not because she liked the place, but because it was the only place she could stay without being forced to leave. Humans did not visit often, and that meant fewer questions, fewer stares, and fewer dangers for her and her child. She had arrived years ago, long before anyone in town noticed her presence. She came with nothing except fear in her heart and a small bundle in her arms. That bundle was her kit, barely able to open its eyes back then. She remembered that night clearly. The sky was dark, the air was cold, and every sound made her flinch. She had crossed many places to reach this world, leaving behind everything she knew. She did not come for adventure. She came to survive. From the first day, she understood one thing very clearly: if she wanted her kit to live a better life, she had to stay invisible. She learned how humans dressed and covered her unusual features as best as she could. Long coats, gloves, scarves, and hats became her daily armor. Even in warm weather, she kept herself covered. People sometimes stared, but she kept her head down and walked faster. Their shelter was a small, abandoned room behind a closed factory. The roof leaked when it rained, and cold air slipped through broken walls in winter. Still, it was a place where she could lock the door and feel safe for a few hours at night. She cleaned the space every day, using old cloth and water she carried from far away. She wanted her kit to grow up in a place that felt at least a little like home. As her kit grew older, a new fear filled her thoughts. She knew that without learning, her child would always remain weak in this world. Intelligence, she believed, was the strongest protection. She had heard whispers of a small school on the edge of town that accepted children who did not fit in. It was risky, but she had no other choice. The first morning she took her kit to school, she woke up before the sun. She gently shook her child awake, speaking in a soft voice. She wrapped the kit in layers of old clothes to hide features that might cause trouble. Then she packed a small bag with a piece of bread and a bottle of water. It was not much, but it was all she had. The walk was long, very long. From the abandoned factory to the school, it took nearly 2 hours on foot. The road was uneven, filled with stones and broken paths. Trucks passed by, leaving clouds of dust behind. Her legs hurt, but she never complained. Each step felt heavy, yet she forced herself forward. She kept reminding herself that this pain was temporary, but knowledge would last forever. During the walk, she watched her surroundings carefully. Every sound made her alert. If she saw too many people ahead, she would take a longer path through empty streets. She avoided shops, avoided crowds, and avoided conversations. Her world was narrow, focused only on one goal: getting her kit safely to school and back home again. Her kit did not fully understand their situation. The child often asked simple questions in a curious voice. Why couldn't they take a bus? Why did they leave so early? Why did other parents not walk this far? Each question felt like a small knife in her heart. She answered with gentle smiles and soft words, never letting fear show on her face. At school, she never stayed long. She waited until the kit entered the building, then she turned around and walked back the same long road. Sometimes she found small jobs during the day, cleaning, carrying boxes, or fixing broken items. The pay was low, and the work was hard, but she accepted it without complaint. Every coin she earned was carefully saved for food, clothes, or school needs. Evenings were quiet. She cooked simple meals over a small heater and listened as her kit talked excitedly about lessons learned that day. Numbers, words, stories, things the mother herself never had the chance to learn properly. She listened closely, proud and hopeful. These moments made all the pain feel worth it. Still, fear never left her. Every knock, every loud noise, made her heart race. She worried constantly about being discovered. She worried about her kit being treated badly. She worried about getting sick and not being able to walk anymore. But more than anything, she worried about failing her child. Some mornings her body felt too weak to stand. Her legs shook, her vision blurred, and her breathing felt heavy. But she never allowed herself to rest. She would sit for a moment, take a deep breath, and then stand up again. Giving up was not an option. Her kit depended on her. People in town saw her sometimes, but never truly saw her. To them, she was just a quiet figure passing by, always walking, always alone. No one knew how many years she had been doing this. No one knew how much strength it took just to survive one day. Yet every morning, as the sun slowly rose, she took her child's hand and started the long walk again. She did not know that someone, somewhere along that road, would one day notice her. For now, her world remained small, quiet, and heavy with struggle, but also filled with deep love and silent determination. She woke every morning before the first light touched the town. And even though her body ached from the long walks of the previous day, she moved with a quiet determination. Her kit's small hand always fit into hers, and that touch reminded her why she endured so much. Every step on the uneven, dusty road was a test of patience, strength, and love. Sometimes the cold of winter cut through her thin coat, making her teeth chatter, but she pressed on. The warmth of her child's tiny hand gave her courage she could not find anywhere else. The path to school was long and full of challenges. Broken roads, scattered stones, and muddy puddles slowed her down, but she never let the difficulties stop her. When heavy rain fell, she would find old cardboard or pieces of plastic to cover her kit and herself. She would walk carefully to avoid slipping, but even when the mud soaked their clothes, she would smile and reassure her child. She spoke softly, saying things like, "Almost there," or "Just a little further." Even when she had no idea how far the school might seem that day, food was always scarce. Most days, they had to survive on the little they could find, or the few coins she earned through temporary jobs. Sometimes it was only a small piece of bread or a bowl of water. She often skipped meals so her kit could eat, believing that her child's strength mattered more than her own. At night, when the little one fell asleep, she would eat quietly, carefully rationing the smallest portion of food, feeling the pangs of hunger, but thinking only of tomorrow's walk. Her kit was young, curious, and full of questions. Every day, she asked about things she saw on the road. Why do those people drive so fast? Why is the road so dirty? Why can't we live where everyone else lives? The mother answered carefully, choosing words that would not scare her child. She wanted to protect the innocence, the hope, and the curiosity that would one day make the child strong. Each answer was measured, gentle, and sometimes incomplete, but it was enough to give comfort and reassurance. Other people passed by, rushing through their own lives, too busy to notice the small figure trudging along the road. No one stopped to ask if she needed help, and she preferred it that way. Attention often brought danger, questions, or suspicion. Being invisible was her protection, but it was also a heavy burden. She carried not only her own fears, but also the responsibility of ensuring her child survived and grew up educated and strong. Some days were especially hard. Blisters formed on her feet, her back ached from carrying supplies, and her arms grew tired from holding her child's hand so tightly. There were mornings when she wanted to give up, to collapse on the side of the road and rest. But each time she looked at her kit's eager eyes, she found the strength to continue. The thought of giving her child a better life pushed her forward. No matter how much her own body protested, evenings were the only time she could rest properly. though sleep was never fully peaceful. The little room she had claimed as home was cold, dark, and sometimes too quiet. She would sit by the small heater, cooking what little food she had, listening to her child recount the day's lessons. "Today I learned to count to 20, the child would exclaim, and we read a story about stars and faraway places. The mother would smile, hiding her exhaustion, letting pride replace the fatigue. These moments were small victories that reminded her that every struggle was worth it. Despite her careful planning, danger always lurked nearby. She had to be cautious of humans who were unkind, curious neighbors, or anyone who might question their unusual appearance. She had learned to notice the smallest sounds, the softest footsteps, and the slightest changes in the wind. Her life was lived with constant vigilance, and yet she never let her fear overwhelm her love for her child. The walks to school became not just a journey of survival, but a test of endurance and quiet courage. On some mornings, the sun would rise slowly, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold. She would pause for a moment, feeling the warmth on her face and the small hand in hers. Those moments gave her hope. They reminded her that even in a world that often seemed harsh and unkind, there were still small joys, quiet moments of beauty, and reasons to keep moving forward. The walk became more than just a necessity. It became a ritual of love, protection, and resilience. Her kit grew stronger each day, learning new words, counting numbers, and understanding the world bit by bit. The mother's sacrifices slowly began to show results. The child ran a little faster, smiled a little brighter, and faced the day with curiosity instead of fear. Seeing this growth gave her mother courage she never knew she had. She felt proud, yet the weight of responsibility never lessened. Every day was a reminder that the path ahead was long, and challenges were many, even when the road seemed endless. And her energy was nearly gone, she would hum soft tunes while walking, comforting herself and her child. Music became a shield, a way to transform pain into strength. Each note carried a message of hope, teaching her child that even in hardship there could be beauty and resilience. She encouraged laughter, small games along the path, stories about stars, rivers, and the creatures of faraway lands. These small distractions turned difficult journeys into shared adventures. Keeping her kit's spirit alive and light, she often imagined a future where her child could walk safely to school without fear, without exhaustion, and without hunger. She dreamed of a world where books were plentiful, friends were welcoming, and love was not hidden in secret corners. These dreams kept her heart warm even on the coldest mornings. Though her present was harsh, her imagination offered a safe place where hope could thrive. The neighbors rarely noticed her, and when they did, they assumed she was just another lonely person in the edges of town. No one guessed the years of sacrifice, the countless miles walked, or the hunger endured. Yet, this invisibility protected them. It allowed the mother to continue her daily routine without interference, to shield her child from the cruelty of judgment, and to focus entirely on survival and education. Sometimes, she found small joys in the ordinary. A bright flower growing through the cracks in the road, the cheerful chirping of a bird, or the laughter of children playing far ahead on the street. These small details reminded her that life had beauty, even in the hardest moments. They gave her a reason to smile, to keep walking, and to keep teaching her child about the wonders of the world beyond their struggles, even as fatigue weighed down her body. She never complained in front of her child. She believed that showing weakness might make the little one afraid, and she could not allow fear to take root. Instead, she spoke words of encouragement, reminding the kit to keep going, to keep learning, and to enjoy small successes. Every day became a lesson not just in school, but in courage, perseverance, and love. The mother knew that her sacrifice was shaping more than just a path to education. It was shaping character. Her child would grow up understanding patience, resilience, and compassion. These lessons could not be found in books alone. They were learned on the road. Through hardship and through the tireless care of a devoted parent, through rain, wind, heat, and exhaustion, she never wavered. Each step on that long road was a testament to love, a silent promise that no matter how hard life became, She would never let her child face it alone. Every small victory arriving at school safely, seeing a smile of understanding, hearing a word spoken correctly was a triumph that outweighed all the pain and struggle, even after many years. She continued the journey. The road remained long, the burdens heavy, and the challenges constant, but she moved forward with unwavering dedication. For her, there was no alternative. Giving up was not an option. Each day, each step, each small gesture of love was a building block for her child's future. In the quiet hours of the morning, walking together in the soft light of dawn, she and her kit created a life of courage, hope, and relentless determination, proving that love can endure any hardship, no matter how long or difficult the journey. The morning sun had barely begun to rise when the truck driver started his usual route. Every day he drove the same roads, delivering goods from town to town, but today something caught his attention. At the edge of the road, near the cracked pavement and overgrown grass, he saw a small figure walking steadily. At first, he thought it was just a tired person on foot, but then he noticed the child holding hands with the adult. There was something different about them, something that made him slow down his truck and look closer. Day after day, the driver began to notice the same pair. The adult always wore layers of clothing, covering every part of the body, no matter the weather. The child walked carefully beside them, eyes wide with curiosity and innocence. The sight was unusual, yet strangely persistent. The driver began to wonder why no one else seemed to notice. He watched silently from behind the wheel, curious but cautious. There was something in the way they moved, steady yet fragile, that made him feel he should pay attention. On a particularly cold morning, the driver saw the adult stumble. The weight of the bag they carried seemed too heavy, and their legs shook from exhaustion. Dust rose from the road as they struggled to regain balance. The child looked up worriedly, clutching their parent's hand tightly. The driver's heart tightened. He knew he could not simply keep driving past. For the first time, he felt compelled to act. He parked his truck on the side of the road and waited, unsure of what he might find, but certain that he could not ignore the situation. As the adult and child approached, he noticed their clothing was patched in many places. The colors faded from long use. Their shoes were worn thin, and their faces showed both determination and weariness. The adult carried the weight of life on their shoulders, and the child, though full of energy, moved carefully, following every step with trust and faith. The driver could see the love between them, a bond so strong it carried them through every hardship. When they passed, he called out gently, "Do you need some help?" The adult froze, eyes wide, and the child clutched their hand tightly. Fear flashed across the adult's face, but the driver quickly lowered his voice, speaking calmly. "I won't hurt you. I just want to help. You don't have to do this alone." For a moment, silence hung in the air. The adult studied him, wary of kindness, unsure if it could be trusted. But something in the driver's tone, steady and sincere, reached past the fear. Slowly they nodded, and he offered a small smile. He began to talk with them, learning about the long walks to school, the exhaustion, and the quiet courage it took to keep moving day after day. The adult spoke softly, explaining the need for secrecy and the danger of being noticed. They shared how every step was a struggle, how food was scarce, and how the child's education was the only hope for a better future. The driver listened intently, his heart heavy with compassion. He realized that this was not just a story of survival, it was a story of relentless love and determination. The truck driver offered simple things at first: a ride on particularly harsh mornings, a warm drink, and sometimes a small snack. These gestures, though small, brought relief and hope. The adult accepted cautiously, still aware of the risks, but gradually, trust began to build. The driver became a quiet ally, someone who noticed when no one else had. His attention gave them a sense of safety they had not felt in years. Over time, began to understand the full extent of their struggles. He saw how the adult walked tirelessly, even when illness or fatigue threatened to stop them. He observed the careful planning, the quiet sacrifices, and the constant worry for the child's well-being. Each day, he felt more admiration for the strength they carried. It was not just endurance, it was courage, love, and the unwavering commitment to protect and nurture a young life in a world that offered little support. The child began to notice the driver as well. At first, there was hesitation, a quiet fear of strangers. But the driver's gentle manner, his calm presence, and small acts of kindness slowly melted the child's caution. They began to wave, then smile, and eventually looked forward to seeing him on the road. The driver's presence became a small but meaningful part of their day, a reminder that someone cared, even in a world that often seemed indifferent. The adult, too, felt a shift. The constant weight of responsibility felt slightly lighter with the knowledge that someone was watching out for them. They began to accept help more openly, allowing themselves to rest for a few moments, to speak freely about struggles that had been carried in silence for years. Conversations with the driver became a lifeline, offering emotional support as well as practical assistance. Slowly, the fear that had defined so much of their life began to lessen. The driver also realized that noticing someone was only the first step. He had to understand the situation, respect boundaries, and act with patience. Every offer of help was measured, careful, and consistent. He did not rush, did not demand, and never judged. Instead, he became a quiet presence on the road, reliable and trustworthy. This patience allowed trust to grow naturally, creating a bond based on respect and genuine concern. Through his observations, he learned about the quiet joys that kept them moving. The small smiles exchanged on the road, the stories told by the child during walks, and the moments of laughter that pierced through exhaustion. These small moments were precious, fragile lights in a life often shadowed by hardship. The driver cherished these glimpses, understanding that behind the struggle was a family holding on to hope with all their might. The road itself became a symbol of their journey. Each step, each mile, each day of walking was a testament to endurance and determination. The driver saw this clearly and often reflected on how little most people understood the effort it took just to survive and care for someone in such circumstances. He realized that noticing them was not just about helping it was about honoring the courage and love they carried silently every day. As time went on, the driver began to consider ways to offer more meaningful assistance. He thought about arranging rides on particularly bad days, connecting them with people who could provide food or supplies, and even finding ways to make the school journey safer and easier. Every idea was carefully considered, respecting their need for privacy while addressing the obvious difficulties they faced. His involvement was deliberate, thoughtful, and consistent, creating a network of small supports that made a real difference. The adult, initially cautious, began to trust these gestures. They could see the sincerity in the driver's actions and words. Trust was fragile and took time to build, but slowly it grew. The road that had once been lonely and exhausting began to feel slightly less burdensome. The adult could allow small moments of relief, knowing someone reliable was paying attention. It was a shift from isolation to cautious hope, a bridge from survival to support. The driver also noticed the resilience of the child. Despite the long walks, limited food, and exhausting routine, the child maintained curiosity, energy, and a desire to learn. The adult's sacrifices had nurtured these qualities, and the driver saw the strength that was quietly growing. He realized that the child's future depended on both the courage of the parent and the small acts of assistance he could provide. This understanding strengthened his commitment to help. Even as he offered support, he remained humble and careful. He never sought recognition, never imposed help, and never interfered with the adult's autonomy. Instead, he observed, offered when needed, and built trust quietly. His role was simple but essential: to notice, to understand, and to support. Through this consistent presence, he became a part of their world, a guardian of small freedoms and simple safety. By now, the daily routine had changed slightly. The long, exhausting walks still happened, but with small reprieves thanks to the driver's help. On particularly harsh days, he would drive them part of the way, allowing the adult to rest and the child to arrive at school with less fatigue. These changes, though small, made a noticeable difference. They gave the adult energy to face challenges, maintain hope, and continue teaching lessons of resilience to their child. The quiet connection between the three grew stronger over time. The driver never rushed their story, never forced conversation, and never judged the hardships he witnessed. Instead, he became a silent witness to their courage, a subtle anchor of support in a life defined by struggle. Each morning, his presence was a reminder that they were no longer completely alone, that someone saw their courage and that kindness could exist even in the harshest realities. Through all of this, the road remained long and difficult. Every day brought challenges, whether fatigue, scarcity, but the presence of someone who noticed made a difference beyond measure. The adult and child continued their journey, now with a quiet hope that one day the road might feel less heavy. The truck driver's simple act of attention had shifted the rhythm of their days, showing that sometimes noticing someone is the first step toward changing a life. And so, each morning, as the sun slowly rose over the quiet outskirts of town, the same trio moved forward. The adult held the child's hand tightly, the child walked with cautious excitement, and the truck driver drove alongside, silently supporting their journey. In these moments, the road became not just a path to school, but a symbol of connection, hope, and the quiet power of someone who cared enough to notice. For many weeks, the truck driver continued to watch and support them quietly. Each day he noticed small details about the alien mother and her child, the careful way she held her kid's hand, the exhaustion hidden behind her calm face, and the love that shone in her eyes even when the world was harsh. He admired her strength, but he also knew that beneath the courage there was fear, worry, and loneliness. He wanted to understand more, but he also knew he had to earn her trust. Trust had been hard-won in her life, and she could not give it lightly. One chilly morning, as frost covered the edges of the cracked pavement, the mother and child set out on their long walk to school. The driver noticed that the mother seemed more tired than usual. Her steps were slower, her back slightly bent, and her breathing heavier. Concern filled his heart. He parked his truck at a safe distance, waiting. But this time, he could not stay silent. He gently called out, "Would you like a ride for a while?" The mother stopped and turned, her eyes wary. Fear and caution flashed across her face. She had spent years avoiding attention, hiding herself and her child from everyone. A stranger offering help could be dangerous, and she had learned to protect herself by trusting no one. But there was something different in the driver's voice, a calmness, patience, and sincerity that reassured her. She studied him for a moment, then slowly nodded. "Just for a little while," she said softly, as they climbed into the truck. The child looked up at the driver with curious eyes, then returned to clutching their mother's hand. The warmth of the truck's heater provided a small relief from the cold, and for a few minutes, the mother allowed herself to relax. She felt safe, though cautiously so, and she began to realize that the driver might be more than a passing helper. He could be someone she could trust. As they drove along the road, the driver spoke gently, asking simple questions about their journey. He asked how long it took to walk to school, what challenges they faced, and how the child felt along the way. The mother answered carefully, speaking in soft, deliberate words. She did not reveal everything at once, but she began to share pieces of their daily struggles, the long hours of walking, the hunger she endured so her child could eat, and the exhaustion that never seemed to leave her. The driver listened closely, nodding and understanding. He did not interrupt, judge, or offer immediate solutions. Instead, he let her words fill the space between them, creating a sense of trust and safety. Each detail she shared deepened his awareness of the sacrifices she made and the courage required to face each day. He realized that this mother's love was extraordinary. Their strength was far beyond what most people could imagine. As the weeks passed, the mother began to share more of her story. She spoke of the life she had left behind, the dangers she had escaped, and the world she had once known. She told him about the nights she had walked in darkness, carrying her child through unfamiliar terrain, and the moments when hunger and fear had nearly overcome her. Each story was told in a quiet voice, heavy with memory, but filled with the determination that had guided her every step. The driver became more than a witness. He became a partner in their small journey. He offered practical help, but always with respect for their independence. He would drive them part of the way on especially difficult mornings, bring warm drinks, or offer small meals when he could. Each act of kindness was deliberate and consistent, showing the mother that he was reliable. Slowly, the walls she had built around herself began to crumble, replaced by cautious hope. Through these conversations, the driver also learned about the child's world. He listened as the mother described lessons learned at school, the excitement of discovering new words, numbers, and stories. She spoke of the child's curiosity, energy, resilience qualities nurtured despite scarcity, exhaustion, and isolation. The driver realized that her sacrifices were not only about survival, but about building a foundation for a brighter future. One afternoon, as they rested by a quiet stretch of road, the mother finally spoke of the hardest part of her journey, the fear of being discovered. She told the driver how she had spent years avoiding attention, hiding her child's unusual appearance and walking long distances to keep them safe. Her voice trembled slightly, revealing the depth of her anxiety, but also the strength that had allowed her to endure. The driver listened silently, offering comfort without words, letting her feel seen and understood. The mother's story was filled with moments of courage and despair. She spoke of nights spent without sleep, searching for food, and protecting her child from dangers both known and unknown. She shared memories of exhaustion that made her legs feel like lead and hunger that left her dizzy. Yet she had never stopped walking, never stopped teaching, never stopped caring. Each story was a testament to the love that guided her every action and the resilience that kept her moving forward as the sun began to set that day, casting long shadows across the empty road. The driver realized the depth of the life he had been quietly witnessing. He understood that this mother had faced challenges no one else could imagine, yet she had never surrendered. Her love had turned exhaustion into purpose, scarcity into careful planning, and fear into a protective force that shielded her child from harm. The mother, for the first time, allowed herself to feel a small measure of relief. She realized that someone had noticed her struggles not as a curiosity, but with genuine care. She began to trust that the driver's intentions were sincere, and that he could become a source of support rather than another potential danger. This realization brought a small but significant change in her heart, his willingness to accept help without fear. In the following days, the driver's role became more consistent. He offered rides on particularly difficult mornings, brought small meals, and connected the mother with people who could provide safe support. Each gesture was simple, yet it carried profound meaning. The mother felt a shift in her daily life. The long, exhausting walks were no longer the only path to safety and education. She could rest for brief moments, know that someone cared, and focus more on teaching her child rather than only surviving herself. The child, too, sensed the change. The small smiles exchanged with the driver became moments of joy, small signs that the world could be kind. The mother saw her child's eyes brighten, curiosity deepen, and energy return after long walks. These transformations were quiet but powerful, demonstrating that even small acts of kindness could ripple into significant changes in a life shaped by hardship. Through all of this, the mother's courage remained. She continued to wake before dawn, prepare for the long walk, and face each day with determination. But now, she carried with her a sense of support, a presence that watched over her, offered help when necessary, and respected her autonomy. This combination of trust, care, and respect became a new form of strength, reinforcing her resolve and giving her hope that the future could be brighter. The road they traveled each day became more than just a path to school. It became a space of connection, understanding, and subtle transformation. The mother, once entirely alone, now had someone who truly saw her struggles, someone who could help without diminishing her independence. The child, once shielded from the world's dangers by constant caution, now had small moments of security, trust, and joy by the end of this period. A bond had formed between the mother and the driver, a bond built on patience, empathy, and respect. She had shared her story fully, revealing both the hardships and the quiet victories. In return, the driver offered consistent support, reliability, and understanding, never imposing, but always present. Together, they had created a space where hope could grow. A fragile yet growing sense that life could be better than the long years of struggle they had endured alone. Through trust, patience, and quiet acts of kindness, the mother began to believe that her sacrifices were not unnoticed. The journey that had once been a lonely test of endurance now included someone who could see, understand, and support them. This recognition brought a profound change not in the challenges they faced, which remained, but in the way they faced them. The road was still long, the walk still difficult, but now they were no longer entirely alone. Hope, once hidden and fragile, had found a foothold, and the future, while uncertain, felt a little brighter. From the day the mother shared her story fully, life began to change slowly but meaningfully. The truck driver continued to help in small ways, at first driving them on especially harsh mornings, carrying their small bags and bringing warm food when he could. These simple gestures made an enormous difference. The long, exhausting walks that had been a constant struggle began to feel a little lighter. The mother could rest more often, and her child could reach school with energy and a sense of excitement instead of weariness. The driver also helped by connecting them with kind people in the town who were willing to offer support. Some provided extra meals for the child, while others offered clothes or small supplies. The mother accepted these gifts cautiously, aware that trust had to be earned. Over time, however, she realized that these people were sincere. Their kindness reminded her that there were good hearts in the world, and that she did not have to carry every burden alone. One particularly cold morning, the driver insisted on driving them all the way to school. The mother hesitated at first, worried about exposure and attention, but she saw the care in his eyes and allowed it. For the first time in years, she and her child experienced a safe, warm, and fast journey. The child's laughter filled the truck, a sound that had grown rare during the long walks. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental after years of struggle. The mother began to plan more for the future. With a little support, she could focus more on her child's learning and less on the daily struggle just to survive. She read stories to the child at night, taught simple lessons in numbers and words, and encouraged curiosity about the world beyond their small hidden life. These moments of learning became more joyful and less rushed. Thanks to the relief brought by small acts of support, the child's confidence grew. At school, teachers noticed the difference. The child participated more in class, asked questions freely, and spoke of dreams beyond the long walks. Friends began to notice the child's energy and kindness, and slowly, small connections formed. The mother's careful protection, combined with the driver's support, allowed her child to experience parts of life that had been impossible before. The truck driver continued to be a quiet presence in their lives. He never pushed too much, never demanded gratitude, and never drew attention to himself. Instead, he simply showed up when needed, listened when spoken to, and acted carefully to ensure their comfort and safety. His consistency built trust, and over time, the mother realized that he was more than a helper. He had become a part of their small, fragile world. The mother also began to notice small changes within herself. For years, fear had dominated her thoughts. She had walked along roads with worry always at her back, fearing discovery, judgment, and harm. Now, with help, she could allow herself brief moments of peace. She rested in the mornings without guilt, ate more regularly, and even laughed with her child during quiet evenings. These small joys, once impossible, became part of their life. The roads that had once been symbols of struggle began to symbolize hope as well. Each step she and her child took was no longer only about survival. It was about learning, growing, and moving toward a better future. The child began to see the world not only as a place of danger, but as a place of possibility. The mother, too, felt a renewed sense of purpose. Her efforts, combined with the quiet support she had received, could finally produce real change. Evenings became moments of connection and reflection. The mother and child would sit together, sometimes reading, sometimes talking about dreams, and sometimes simply enjoying the warmth of a safe home. They shared stories, laughter, and small plans for the future. The mother noticed how much easier it was to focus on love and teaching rather than only on hiding and surviving. These moments became anchors, giving her courage to continue. Now strengthened by hope instead of just endurance, the driver occasionally shared stories of his own life as well. He spoke of the long roads he had traveled, the people he had met, and the simple joys he had found in helping others. These stories became lessons for the mother and child, showing that small acts of kindness could ripple into meaningful change. The child listened with wide eyes, learning the value of compassion, empathy, and noticing the struggles of others. Slowly, life began to feel lighter for all three of them. The mother could allow herself small indulgence, buying a little treat for the child, cleaning the home thoroughly without exhaustion, or simply sitting quietly for a few minutes with a warm drink. These moments, though simple, were revolutionary for someone who had spent years in constant motion and worry. The small gestures of care had created space for life beyond mere survival. The child began to dream more boldly. No longer was school just a daily necessity. Learning became an adventure. Stories from books sparked imagination, curiosity blossomed, and even the small details of the world became exciting. The mother watched with pride, seeing the energy and hope return to her child's face, a reflection of her years of struggle and perseverance finally paying off as the days passed. The bond between the mother, child, and driver grew stronger. Trust became solid, mutual care became routine, and the quiet connection that had begun with observation became a lasting support system. The road to school, once a symbol of hardship, became a symbol of resilience, courage, and eventual hope. Every mile walked and every challenge overcome had led to this new chapter, where life, though still difficult, held promise. The mother even began to think about longer-term changes. She explored ways to make life safer and easier, including better clothing for harsh weather, preparing meals ahead of time, and organizing supplies efficiently. She began to see the future not just as something to survive, but as something to shape. The child, too, grew more confident, independent, and joyful, reflecting the mother's hard work and the small network of support they had gained. Through it all, the mother never forgot the journey that had brought her here, the long walks, the sleepless nights, the hunger, and the fear. But now these memories carried lessons rather than despair. They reminded her of the strength she possessed, the love she gave, and the hope she could nurture. Each day became a celebration of survival, transformed into thriving. Endurance transformed into growth. The truck driver's consistent presence proved that noticing someone in need can change lives. His willingness to offer help, without judgment or expectation, allowed the mother and child to move from a life of exhaustion and isolation to one with hope, learning, and small joys. He demonstrated that even quiet acts of kindness, performed with patience and respect, can create profound and lasting change. Eventually, the mother could walk shorter distances without feeling overwhelmed, knowing she had support nearby. The child could reach school energized and engaged, and the nights were filled with warmth, learning, and laughter. Their home, though small, became a sanctuary. The years of struggle had not been erased, but they had been transformed into lessons of courage, love, and the strength of human and alien resilience. Finally, after many long and challenging years, the mother could see a future where her child would grow up not only educated but confident, resilient, and full of hope. The small gestures of care from the truck driver, combined with her tireless love, had created a world where fear no longer controlled every step. Life was still hard, but it was no longer only a struggle. It had become a journey of growth, hope, and the quiet joy of knowing that someone truly cared. And so, the long walks continued, but they were no longer a symbol of struggle alone. They were a symbol of endurance, hope, and the transformative power of compassion. The mother and child moved forward with courage, and the truck driver's quiet support ensured that each step carried less fear, more comfort, and the promise of a better tomorrow. The journey had changed them all, proving that noticing, caring, and helping can turn hardship into hope, struggle into strength, and survival into a brighter, shared future.